The prepared speech. Now, you'll be asked to do 2 prepared speeches during the course of a year, either grade 10, 11, and 12, in all those years. And the duration of the speech will be somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes, depending if you're in grade 10. Your teacher will probably say 3 minutes. Just follow the instruction, but it's between 3 and 5. And each speech is marked out of 50 components that I'll show you just now. But then, of course, it is converted into 10 marks per speech. Now, firstly, the topic. Usually you will be given a very wide topic. So it's your choice, and your choice is important. It might be, say, any word ending with shin, like motion, diction, perfection, whatever. It could be a proverb. There's a long list of proverbs that might be given to you, or an idiom. It might be a palindrome. I did I. It's a word that can be read this way and that way, and it's the same thing. I did I, or madam, M-A-D-A-M. Can you see how that's a palindrome? Or sexes. We must go and find a palindrome and speak about it. Or a palingram, which are words that can be used this way or that way. He was he, backwards, forward. It's just a way of getting you to go and search a little bit and find something original. That's all it is. The topics are usually very wide. In fact, in grade 12, you are usually allowed to use your own topic. And if you get that option, very often people then don't know what to choose. But look at a controversial issue, something controversial in the news and so on, or something of current interest, and then, give your take on that. But make very sure that you choose something fresh and original. If you choose a hackneyed topic, for instance, the sword, the pen is mightier than the sword, remember, it's been done many times, have a fresh approach to it. But if you don't have a fresh approach or something really special, avoid the hackneyed ones, okay? Remember, before you start, that you must include both personal and research components. There's a balance there. You must please make sure that from the beginning you must be very aware that you are sensitive in the material that you choose, sensitive in terms of cultural groups, and be careful, look out for bias in arguments. The content must really be thought-provoking. Otherwise, you're going to speak your audience to sleep. Include unexpected information, something really fresh and different and original. Include that. Make use of rhetorical devices. I'm going to talk about that to make your style more interesting. But please don't overdo it. Don't use 20 rhetorical questions in your speech. Rhetorical devices are devices that make your speeches more effective. Preachers and so forth, they often use those devices when they preach. The way they use their voices and pauses and the rhetorical questions to get a certain effect. So it's things like rhetorical questions, repetition for effect, contrast, this but that. And also, if you use emotive language, you involve the audience because you make them think of that emotion and they might get involved. And also by using inclusive language. If you talk about us and we, you are including the audience. So those are all rhetorical devices that you can use. Make sure that you use them, but don't overuse them, okay? In terms of planning, also things that you need to remember. Don't ever forget, whatever you do, writing, speaking, that you register your style and your voice must correspond with audience, with purpose, with context, and with theme. You've heard this 100 times. Make sure that you establish that. That you use appropriate language to demonstrate your critical language awareness. To use the right word in the right place, right? Express facts and opinions through denotation and through connotation, right? And through implied meaning. So make use of the figurative language and the implied meanings and so on. And then, of course, you are also marked on your use of aids, be it audio or visual or audio visual. It could be graphs, audiovisual graphs. It could be anything to enhance, or pictures to enhance the accuracy of your presentation. So think of all these things as you are now starting to plan for your speech. Once you've defined your purpose and your audience clearly, you know that you're speaking in front of an adjudicator. There will be parents there, and there will be some of your peers there. They will probably be in grade 10 to 12, and make sure that you keep that in mind, because that's who you're speaking to. You must keep all of that in mind, that you have parents, children, the adjudicator who has heard millions of speeches before. So define your purpose and your audience clearly before you start. And then you sort through all the information that you've gathered, and you plan your structure. And as is the case with an essay, you must have your introduction and your body and your conclusion. And you must develop your argument in 3 to 5 paragraphs or points. So your body will be point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4, and that will all be the different aspects of your whole speech. And these points must relate to the introduction, and the conclusion, of course, must jump back and must make all of this cohesive and coherent. Right, now about your introduction. The first thing you need to know is that you must establish a rapport, in other words, a good relationship with the audience immediately. There must be some kind of connection between you and the audience. It must be established right at the beginning, at the outset, because this can make or break your speech. You're going to put them off, or you're going to draw them in. It's one of those two things. They're going to fall asleep, or they're going to sit up and listen. And it's up to you to capture their attention. You can perhaps, one way to do it is perhaps to motivate the audience to listen by asking a question. Throw a question at the audience, a thought-provoking one. And with a good pause there, might just draw them in. Give it could be a question, it could be an unusual fact. Did you know this? Throw it at them, and it must be really unusual, but substantiated, obviously. Or if you have a trick up your sleeve, it might be a lie, but then you're going to reveal that soon. But you're going to get their attention. You're going to make them laugh or something. So also it could be a very highly relevant piece of information that will let them sit up and think, oh, this sounds interesting. I would like to hear more about this. I don't actually know anything about this topic. She's going to talk about memes, and I don't know anything about memes. I'm 56 years old now. I'm not really a meme person. So you either motivate the audience, or you personalize the speech by telling a personal anecdote. But of course, don't be boring, please. It must be something really amazing, or a relevant joke. Also be careful not to become hackneyed and bring in jokes that's really, I've heard that one before. And you present the topic succinctly, in other words, very briefly say where you're going with the speech of yours, and you must already have handy a transition into the first paragraph. So that's your introduction. Those are elements that you must have in your introduction. Then, of course, when you look at the body, according to the introduction, what you've promised in the introduction, you must now fulfill. You must have your 3 to 5 main points, and you must back them up with specific information, or you expand them with sub-points. You flesh them out with examples, with illustrations, with quotes, statistics. It's just that when you are giving facts, just remember, you must say where the information comes from, please. For instance, in a survey conducted by activists in support of abused women, Canada 2018, it was reported that you say where you get your information from. And you're not going to overdo that either. Don't give too much of that because it becomes very boring. So one or two of these, it just makes the audience feel that you've done your homework, right? And then when using a quotation, that's when you're giving facts, give the name of the source as well as the information about the source, right? For instance, Mr. Joel Hobb, the CEO of SPCA in Tshwane, said, and then you go on and you say what he said. So it's just a kind of validation. It makes your speech more believable. We're going on with the body. Remember that there must be a careful balance between researched material. It can't all be researched because that also becomes boring. Because where do you come in? How did you interpret all the research that you did? So balance it with your personal views, but you must have both. Don't overdo either. It can't only be your opinion and not can't only. So you've said something, you've given a fact, a research thing, and then you say, last week, our Animal Friends Club visited the SP Saint Centurion and found that, blah, and there what it actually means that your personal experience actually substantiates the research that you've already given. So that just strengthens your point. You must please make sure that you create a flow, both naturally and logically as your argument develops. Please make sure and use your connectors. The connecting words, as a result, furthermore, therefore, although, they connect ideas, but also they give a pointer to the audience that they must just listen to the next thing you're going to say. With both those functions. Then the conclusion. Remember, the conclusion is the last thing that the adjudicator or the assessor is going to listen to. It must be very strong. It must leave a permanent impression. Just as important as the introduction, this must also be as decisive and strong and clear. And it should, in effect, give a summation of everything you've said and sort of link with your intro. You can, for instance, there once again use what you've used in the beginning. It can be an anecdote, a quotation, a call for action, where you get them to join your thoughts and to do something about a certain SPCA matter or something. It could be a surprise statement. You can surprise the audience, or a solution to a mystery that you've built up. You might have built up this argument very cleverly, and there might have been a mystery evolving, and now suddenly in the end you solve that mystery. Interesting stylistic effect, right? Or it could be a comparison that actually highlights the point that you're making. You must end positively, constructively. The speech must not hang in the air, and don't end in a negative way, because that leaves sort of a sour taste. You must at least have some kind of solution if there was a problem. End positively or constructively. And assert. In other words, be very sure about yourself. Assert strongly. Don't say, assert, right? But remember, in your conclusion, there will be no new information. You're going to summate, you are going to perhaps pull it all together, but you're giving no new information. You cannot bring research material or a new point into your final paragraph. You cannot do that. It's not done. It's not a good thing to do. And eventually, when you get to the very end, just a practical thing, very often learners just say, thank you. So who are you thanking? Why are you thanking? Or you thank who? The adjudicator. Don't thank the audience. Don't thank the adjudicator. Don't even say thank you for listening. Don't thank the audience. Then refining your content. Once you have put all of this together, you've got your structure, you've got your arguments, you've fleshed it out, you've got your research, your personal. Then reflect. Go back and just sort of look at it critically. Look at the organization. If you've digressed from the original plan, in other words, you said in your introduction you're going to mention certain aspects and then you didn't mention it, then you're going to have to go and change your introduction. You can't say something in introduction that you're going to do that and then you're not doing it. So adapt, then make sure that you adapt your introduction and edit accordingly. And then, of course, a very important thing to do once you are now sure about what you've got to say, you prepare your cue cards. They are very important as well. They are there for you to use. They are not ornaments, right? They are there for you to use. But they are just prompts, they are keywords, and they should never attract attention. You must never attract the attention to your handling cue cards, or they must not be too big or too bright so that they get the attention of the audience, and it's almost in the way, right? So, and also don't write on the back of the cue card because then you're going to have to flip it, and in the process of flipping it, you might drop it. So, don't attract any attention to the cue cards. It must be a very natural process, and you're going to use it, keep it at breast or yeah, more or less in breast height, and preferably have them in your one hand and then switch them with the other, but then you have the other hand handy to make a gesture to emphasize a certain point. So you must be able to use them comfortably, please. If you have audiovisual aids, it's good, but it can also be totally distractive, just like cue cards can become very distractive. I've seen people throwing the cue cards on the floor. It's so distractive. So if you use slides or posters or models or pieces of music, whatever it is, to enhance your speech, make sure that they actually add value to your speech. They must support the content and not distract. PowerPoint presentations can also enhance a speech, but be very careful. This is still a speech. Don't put a lot of text in your PowerPoint presentation because what are you trying to prove? You're not speaking now. You're actually reading from your PowerPoint presentation. It must always have a supportive role. Don't forget that. Even pictures also can jolt your memory, and it's a clever technique to use a picture for every main point because the picture will remind you of where you're going now in your speech. But you must make sure that you place the web page and the date that you received this picture at the bottom. How will the task of speech making now be assessed? According to a marking rubric, and I suggest that you get hold of one. Very often in your textbooks, there's a rubric at the back of your textbook, or your teacher might have one. You make a copy for yourself. But the marking rubric tells you exactly what the teacher is going to look for and what the teacher is going to give marks for. So it's nicely broken down. So you can see what you should aim for as well in terms of every subsection. So if you have a marking rubric, look at what can give you the highest possible mark in each section. They're going to give you 10 marks for research skills. How well did you research? Then they're going to give you 10 marks, a mark out of 10 for planning and organizing. So we've talked about that. Two of these aspects are for presentation, and also actually the third one as well. But 10 marks then for your presentation skills, your speaking skills that we'll talk about in the next lesson. Your critical awareness of language is 10 marks. And then also you'll be given 10 marks for how you handled your cue cards. How well did you handle your audiovisual material? And how effective were the pictures, for instance, or the presentation? If you had too much text on your PowerPoint, they're going to take marks off because it didn't enhance your speech. It actually it did harm to your speech, and it's actually not what you should have done. So eventually the mark will be out of 50 because it's 10 times 5, and they will divide it and give you a mark of 10. And then, as I said, you will do 2 speeches.